Half the Sky by Nicholas D. Kristof and Shara Wooten. Half the Sky brings the human rights violation, the oppression of women in the developing world, into perspective. It is also a call to arms, calling on women and men from around the world to come together against the oppression of women. This is a drawing by our group member Isaac, depicting a Pakistani woman whose husband burned her with acid. This image represents the hardships women in many parts of the world face because of the lack of equality to men. More girls have been killed in the last 50 years, precisely because they were girls, than men were killed in all the wars in the 20th century. More girls are killed in this routine gendercide in any one decade than people were slaughtered in all the genocides of the 20th century. This quote shows the magnitude of the issue of women's equality and points out the fact that it is an issue we know little about. Many women around the globe are not educated, which makes it difficult for them to get jobs or stand up for themselves. In many cases, this leads to prostitution, rape, and poverty. This gives us our first takeaway, which is that education is the major problem in women's oppression, but also exists as an effective solution. If we can educate more women, it will give them the opportunity to create better lives for themselves and help avoid situations where violence can occur. The importance of education was discussed on page 170. Schooling is also a precondition for girls and women to stand up against injustice, and for women to be integrated into the economy. Until women are numerate and literate, it is difficult for them to start businesses or contribute meaningfully to their national economies. In the 19th century, the central moral challenge was slavery. In the 20th century, it was the battle against totalitarianism. We believe that in this century, the paramount moral challenge will be the struggle for gender equality around the world. Another major cause of the problem is the fact that women in many less developed countries are seen and treated as lesser beings rather than humans, just as slaves were treated in the 19th century. Unless women can be seen as equals or the world's view of women change in the coming years, inequality and oppression will continue to exist because of the lack of respect and the neglect they receive from their husbands and other men in society. Coerced and microfinance were two words that stood out to us while we read the book. Most of the women were deceived and coerced into prostitution, and that can be somewhat avoided with the greater education of women. Microfinance is a great solution to help women's standings by giving them the opportunity to create business for themselves, to live off of, and keep them out of prostitution. One of the most influential stories was that of a woman named Usha Narayan, one of the few children fortunate enough to graduate college from the slum she was raised in. She was made a target and raped by a local gang that controlled the slum through fear. While being terrorized by the gang a second time, she decided to lock herself in her house and, busting open a gas pipe, threatened to blow herself and the gang up. She inspired the rest of the slum, who had been beaten and violated into submission, to revolt, and they killed the gang's leader. All of this was possible because of her education, and it gave her the knowledge and courage to stand up for herself. Our last takeaway is that society knows very little about the severity of this issue, and there are many ways to get involved. Just because you might not be able to raise money or help build a school in Africa, or go there on a mission trip yourself, it doesn't mean you can't help. The book gives us a call to arms and asks for nothing more than for us to be aware and try to make others aware of the problem.